is that once again, I've got another feather in the old cap here. I feel like at some point what I need to do is I need to just go all the way back from 2020 and just make a compilation of all of my great takes, which in my defense would be a very, very, very long compilation. I had a lot of great takes, but there's none better, I got to say, than what I said last week, which is that, quite frankly, that C.J. Stroud is indeed an MVP candidate. And you've seen after this past week with what he did against the Cincinnati Bengals, there's reason to believe that not only is he an MVP candidate, but he's the MVP front runner. Emmitt, where do you stand on C.J. Stroud's MVP stock?
I think you could make a very compelling case. And if there was going to be a rookie to win it, it would obviously have to be the rookie who's having the best rookie quarterback season of all time, as we're seeing right now. And listen, his numbers aren't necessarily going to blow you away, right? Only less than a 62% completion percentage. But 15 touchdowns to 2 picks is going to get it done. He's probably going to throw a ballpark around 30 touchdowns. And, even if those interceptions numbers do spike, I think you'd take, 28 touchdowns and 7 picks from a rookie, especially when, you weren't even looking at being a contender at this point. And right now you're ahead of the Bills and you're ahead of the Cincinnati Bengals, who they just beat this week in those standings. And listen, if you want to make the case that Brock Purdy was an MVP candidate through however many games, you should listen to this C.J. Stroud case, because Brock Purdy, although has a higher completion percentage and higher yard per completion, same amount of touchdowns, Purdy has more picks. And I think you can say a bunch of things about Purdy that you probably can't say about C.J. Stroud, which is Brock Purdy has cost his team games, whereas C.J. Stroud is winning his team games. You take a look, and that drive at the end of the Tampa Bay game, perfection. There's no reason that you should expect a rookie to drive down the field, drive the length of the field to go score a touchdown to put you ahead when they're lost like that. And again, he had 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's one of the best quarterback games we've seen in years, not just like from a rookie, years from CJ Stroud, 71% completion percentage in that game. And then he does it again this week against Cincinnati. He gets them in field goal range for them to miss. And even in the Carolina game, he didn't play particularly well. 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. He did run for a touchdown, but he had them in field goal range. And if I'm not mistaken, they made the field goal, and then the defense gave up a drive for the Panthers to get their one and only win of the season. So he hasn't really been costing his team games. He's won a lot of games, including, again, a blowout win over Jacksonville. And he lost his first 2 games, yes, against Lamar Jackson, a guy that I think you and I both hold in fairly high regard when it comes to top quarterbacks in the league. Yeah, he lost his first game. They had him throw him 44 passes. That's not necessarily being set up for success. But if you're going to make an argument for any quarterback, I don't see why it's not C.J. Stroud, especially with quarterback play, because we do know it's a quarterback award, being down so far in this league.
So I'm glad you said that, because last week I said that C.J. Stroud was MVP, and I think there was a lot of people who didn't really believe me. So as opposed to continue to push the pro C.J. Stroud case, let me just do this. Let me explain why all the people are saying are the MVP are not. We'll start first and foremost with Patrick Mahomes, who is obviously the best quarterback on the face of the planet, and when it's all said and done, will likely be the greatest quarterback to ever step foot on the field. He's not the MVP. Why? Because Pat Mahomes has been playing up to Pat Mahomes standards, so it's not him. You can move on to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is the MVP of his team. That's A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown has been better. He's been a better Eagle this year than Jalen Hurts has been. So it's not him. We know it's not Josh Allen. We know it's not Dak Prescott, despite the fact that Dak's been playing great, right? And I think that Dak Prescott has slowly played himself into the conversation over the past couple weeks. He's got some room to go, but he's not the MVP, right? Lamar's not the MVP because in each of the 3 games that he and the Ravens have lost, they have blown leads. Lamar also has the same number of total turnovers as he does total touchdowns. Now, crazy coming from me, because last week I said Lamar Jackson was the front runner for the race. Do you know why I said that? Because at the time, Lamar Jackson's case slightly better than C.J. Stroud's case. So that's what that was, right? So it's not Pat Mahomes. It's not Jalen Hurts. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Lamar Jackson. Unfortunately, it's not Joe Burrow, because they've had a slow start. They also just lost to CJ Stroud, right? It's not Trevor Lawrence, although Trevor Lawrence has been playing better. It's not him. You mentioned Brock Purdy. It's not Brock Purdy. It's not Jared Goff. It's not Russell Wilson. Like, I could continue to go on and on and on and on, right? There were 5 guys, I think, at the beginning of the season that everyone thought was going to be MVP. It was either going to be Pat Mahomes, it would be Jalen Hurts, it would be Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people thought it would be Joe Burrow, and some people thought it would be Aaron Rodgers. If you want to throw Justin Herbert in there, you can throw Justin Herbert in there, right? Justin Herbert don't have the record. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played football since the fourth game of the
the fourth snap. Yep.
The fourth play of the season. He hasn't played football, right?
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts, not the MVP of his own team. Pat Mahomes has not been paying up to Pat Mahomes standards. Trevor Lawrence, they got off to a slow start. He's played better, but still not there yet. Joe Burrow also got off to a slow start. Lamar Jackson's not that guy. He's that guy, but he's not the front runner right now. So if I have to pick one guy right now at almost 9 o'clock at night, right before week 11 kicks off tomorrow, if I have to make a decision on if I'm voting who the MVP is today, it's CJ Stroud. And he deserves it. Like, this isn't like a pity thing. Like, we're not trying to make no one is blowing out, like, we're not blowing out of the water what's happening, right? I talked to JT from Jathan and Don last week, and he said, well, the stats aren't that great. Well, let's talk about it for a second. Right now, CJ Stroud has 2,600 passing yards, which is good for second in the league. He has 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He has a 63.3 QBR, right? As you mentioned, completion percentage, not that great. But here's the deal. If you take his 10-game stats and you project them over the next 7 games of the season, right? He's on. So there's like a creature or something up there. Okay, I don't know. I'm sorry. I thought it was a mouse for a second. I was about to stop, but it's something happened.
If it was on a ceiling, that'd be a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be no show. Anyway.
Yeah.
Right now, CJ Stroud, 2,600 yards, 15 touchdowns, 2 picks, 63.3 QBR, right? If you take his yards, his touchdowns, and his interceptions, and you project them over the next 7 games of the season, he's on pace for 4,464 yards, 30-ish touchdowns, 34 touchdowns, and 3.4 interceptions. 34-3 as a touchdown interception ratio, if I'm not mistaken, last time I checked, would be the best touchdown interception ratio ever. Like,
it'd be close to Rodgers 48-5.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it would be better. I think it would be better.
It's 48.
Well, actually,
48-5 is like 9 touchdowns to 1.
I think Rodgers in 2019 had like 25-2, or maybe it was 2018. The year McCarthy got fired, he had like 25-2. Either way, it would be insane.
That's good. No, yeah, that's right. If it 25-2 is better than 34-3, but it's also 34 touchdowns to 25 touchdowns. So it makes. I love Eric, but it makes sense. So like that's what we're looking at, right? We're talking about one of the greatest touchdown ratios ever that he's on pace for, right? We're talking about a 4,500 yard season. 4,500 yards. That's good ball. Like I know that we watched Pat Mahomes the 2 times he won MVP. He did something great. We watched Aaron Rodgers back-to-back years. He did something fantastic. We watched Lamar Jackson when he won MVP. Do something fantastic. Those are the last 5 MVPs we've had. They had great seasons. This season isn't that bad. We're also talking about a rookie. Emmitt, do you know the last time a rookie won NFL MVP? Want to take a gander? Do you know who it was?
If I had to take a wild guess, there hasn't been one.
No, there has.
Oh, there has. Oh.
There's been one. His name is Jim Brown.
Oh,
in
he's pretty good.
1957.
Yeah, before the merger. Yeah.
It's the last time a rookie won MVP. So, and he's not a quarterback, which made that his season was even better because, as we know, there's historically a quarterback award. So I've got a quarterback who's playing good ball on a team who's been without their best defensive player for most of the season in Derek Stingley Jr., who has a new head coach, a lot of new weapons offensively, and I get it, right? They're 5-4, not a sexy record. But this is the Houston Texans we're talking about. The Houston Texans, they're supposed to have 5 wins on the season. And when you look at when you look at their schedule, when you look at what they have left to do, they're actually in a position to not only make the playoffs, to not only win more games, but they're actually in a position, believe it or not, to win the division. They're not that far off from the division when you consider the fact that the team at the top of the division, the Jacksonville Jaguars, has lost to the Houston Texans. So really, if you want to be technical, if you want to think about it from this perspective, the Houston Texans could win the AFC South this year with CJ Stroud under quarterback, under center in his first year. And if that happens, I mean this, if CJ Stroud continues to play as great as he's played, and the Houston Texans win the AFC South, what they are very capable of doing, because as it stands right now, they hold a tiebreaker over the Jaguars. The difference is the Jaguars have 3 losses and they have 4. Right, that's the only difference. But If they have the same record by the end of the season, guess who's going to win the division? The Houston Texans. And if the Houston Texans win the division with the season that C.J. Stroud is projected to have, almost 4,500 yards, 34 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, that's an MVP season. And I know it's not the sexy pick. I know it's not the pick that anyone thought that was going to be going into the season, right? But if there was somebody out there who put money on long shot odds for C.J. Stroud to win MVP, bro, that's good money. It's good money they're making. Now, with all the hype around C.J. Stroud over the past couple weeks, Vegas has probably adjusted the odds as they should. And so maybe putting a bet on C.J. Stroud at week 10 for MVP will not be as lucrative as putting a bet down for C.J. Stroud to MVP in the preseason. But he deserves it. He deserves the credit. And this is where we're at. And I'm going to take it a step further. I don't know if there's a credible threat. I don't think there's a credible threat. You can say Tyreek Hill, but the Dolphins haven't beaten a good football team all year. They're 0-3 against teams above 500, so it's not him. I could say it's A.J. Brown. He does play for the team that has the best record. I'd give you that. But unfortunately, as we know, it's a quarterback award. A.J. Brown is not a quarterback. I could say it's Myles Garrett. But with Deshaun Watson now not playing football for the rest of the year, chances are the Browns are going to tinker off, and he's not going to have the wins as well as the historical season to be named the MVP this year. So this is really a two-horse race. It's either going to be C.J. Stroud or it's going to be Tyreek Hill. And honestly, if I had to pick today, I'd pick C.J. Stroud. And it's not just because he's a quarterback. It's because he's quite literally the most valuable player on his team. And not saying that Tyreek is not, but they haven't been a good football team all year.
And I also think that one of the things that we haven't really mentioned or talked much about yet is his supporting cast. Yeah. Like it's not like he's going out there with like the Brock Purdy comparison I made earlier. It's not like he's going out there with Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and the Avengers or whatever. It's not like he's going out there with that. He's going out there with Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz and a bunch of, again, I don't want to say nobodies because a lot of them are just very young, but it's like his most established wide receiver in the league is probably Robert Woods at this point in time. So I think it's just he's doing something that we haven't really seen before, where he's like a rookie quarterback who's already flat out like carrying his team.
He is. And the thing that makes it the best is if you're a Houston Texans fan, you love this, right? Because you went from having to and now okay. Let me put it this way. We've seen this movie in Houston before, and I don't want to make this comparison, but I'm gonna. And I don't mean this from a character standpoint because I do not think C.J. Stroud is has a much better character than Deshaun Watson. I know that already, but we saw this before. Deshaun Watson, he showed up in Houston, lights out. Played a really good ball. At one point, we were having conversations of whether or not he'd be, whether or not he was better than Pat Mahomes. Those conversations were happening, right? Made the playoffs a couple of years, had crazy things happen. And then things went left, right? J.J. Watt was getting older. They decided to trade DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals for what can only be, referred to as a bag of chips, right? And that was the end of basically the beginning of the end of the Deshaun Watson era in Houston. Now, I don't think that C.J. Stroud's tenure, if it is short-lived, is going to end the way that Deshaun Watson's did, because I have nothing but faith. I have the utmost faith in C.J. Stroud's ability to keep his hands to himself. But what I will say is, if the Houston Texans do what they did with C.J. Stroud, what they did with Deshaun Watson, and trade away his best player and just completely tank it, that's not going to be good, because this is a guy in C.J. Stroud, and I hate to sound like Chris Collinsworth here, but here's a guy in C.J. Stroud who can not only take you to a playoff game, who can not only win a playoff game, but you give him a couple more years to really get this NFL thing down pat. You give Tank Dell and Nico Collins and Dameon Pierce a couple more years to really start to mesh. You give DeMeco Ryans a couple more years to really build that defense the way he wants to around Will Anderson and Derek Stingley Jr. You give him a couple more years, and we could be talking about the Houston Texans competing for a championship, because this isn't the best of C.J. Stroud. This is just the beginning. And because it's just the beginning, we know that he can get better. We know that he will be better. He's already top 10 in the league right now. He's already top 10 in the league. He's already a top 10 quarterback in the league right now. And if I'm just ranking quarterback play all year, he's got a strong argument that I can quite frankly say he's been the best quarterback that's been playing football all year. And if that's what you're getting in his rookie season, you can only hope and expect more. All Houston has to do is not get in the way that they got in the way with Deshaun Watson by trading away one of the best players on the team. So I hope, for the sake of D'Amico Ryans, because I'm a fan, for the sake of CJ Stroud, because I'm a fan, for the sake of Derek Stingley Jr. and all the other young guys out there, because I'm a fan of all those guys, I hope that this front office does not shoot themselves in the foot the way that the previous front office did, because that would not be what's best for business. What's best for business is building around CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Damian Pierce and all those guys on offense and defense, because you got something brewing here in Houston.